Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Development Management Committee. I'm Councillor Kieran Bowker, the Chair of the Committee. Before we start the meeting, I just need to make a couple of announcements. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm goes off, please make your way out of the nearest emergency exit and gather at the front of Runningmead Hall. Just to say, the meetings of the committee are live streamed on our channel on YouTube. Lastly, may I ask all present to switch mobile phones to silent? And forgive my constant sniffing, hay fever season is upon us. May I ask the Development Management Committee members present who are seated in the chamber in the row in front of me to introduce themselves, stating your name only, starting on my left.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Jamie Huntsman.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Grace Watson.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Carol Sage.
Good evening, Chairman. Councillor Michael Fuller.
Good evening all, Councillor Rob Lillis.
Good evening, Councillor Gareth Howlett.
Good evening everyone, Councillor Russ Savage.
Good evening, Councillor Diana Jones.
Thank you, members. May I ask the officers present to introduce themselves again, starting on my left.
Good evening, Stephen Garner, Assistant Director for Development Services.
Good evening, Sonia Worthington, Democratic Services Manager.
Good evening, Loretta Hill, Civic and Governance Officer.
Thank you. And may I ask any other members present to introduce themselves?
Councillor Sharon Ainsley.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
We have apologies from Councillor Cortez.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is members' interests. Members, in the interest of openness and transparency, it should be noted that item 4 of the agenda relating to Waterside Farm Leisure Centre is an application made by this council. This does not preclude you from taking part in the debate and voting on the matter as the planning committee for this authority. Are there any other interests to declare? Thank you. Item 3 is minutes. Are the minutes for the Development Management Committee held on the 11th of February agreed? Thank you. Item 4 is Waterside Farm Leisure Centre, Somnes Avenue. Members, we have an application seeking prior approval for the installation of a solar photovoltaic system on the existing pitch roof of the swimming pool at Waterside Farm Leisure. I'll now ask the planning officer to present this item.
Thank you very much, Chair. As the Chairman said, this application is at Waterside Farm Sports and Leisure Complex down on Canvey Island. And this application is being presented to the Development Management Committee because under the Council's scheme of delegation, all council own applications and applications on the Council's land need to be presented to it for consideration. I'm sure you're all familiar with the location of the leisure centre. We've got the roundabout onto Canvey here, Somnes Avenue along here, and the leisure centre located here with the model train track here, just to orient you all. And you can see it a little bit clearer on this aerial image here. Permission is sought to install solar panels on the eastern and western slopes of the roof over the swimming pool. So that is this part of the building here. So if I move on and show you these images, this is by the entrance to the leisure centre, and you can see the northern elevation, and these are the two roof pitches, this way facing east, that way facing west, and this is the rear of the building. It's quite a shallow pitch. And these are the roofs that the solar panels will be fitted on. You can see this is the existing roof plan of the site here with the two roof pitches, and then continue on and you can see this red hatching is where the proposed banks of solar panels are to go. These in reality wouldn't be visible from ground level and you wouldn't know they were there. So the application before you this evening is slightly different from a normal planning application that you would normally consider, and this is a prior approval application. A prior approval application is a request submitted to the local planning authority to confirm that a proposed development is considered permitted development and meets specific criteria. This allows an applicant to check if their proposal is acceptable before starting construction and usually focuses on technical details rather than the overall design. The local planning authority and yourselves as the decision makers can only assess the proposed development against the specific criteria outlined in the planning regulations. As you'll see before you in the report this evening, all those criteria have been set out for you and an assessment has been carried out by officers and the proposal has been found to comply with all the relevant criteria and found to be compliant. It is therefore recommended to you by officers, as set out in Appendix 1 of the report, that the decision be taken that prior approval of the local planning authority is not required, which in effect confirms that the proposed works can take place and do not require the local planning authority's prior approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Do members have any questions for the planning officer about the planning application? Please note this is the member's opportunity to seek clarification from the planning officer on any matters they're unclear of. Members should refrain, of course, on making statements about their views on the proposal. These should be expressed in the debate section of the meeting. Are there any questions? Councillor Savage.
I've got a few questions actually, but I suppose the first one would be, what would be the payback time for electricity generated from the solar panels?
Whilst it's not material to the planning application in hand, I don't know the answer to that. It's not been information that's been provided to the planning department.
Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on what my colleague has just asked, Steve, do we know roughly what saving in terms of power consumption will be from the solar panels? I appreciate it's not a planning issue, but while we're here, I'm sure everyone's interested. Thank you.
No, you're right. Whilst it's not a planning issue, I do know the answer to that, and it's approximately estimated that there'll be about a third saving on energy bills from the installation of the panels.
Councillor Harman.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand there's a grant that we're getting for this. I think I believe it's from Sport England. Is it going to would the grant would that cover the whole cost, or is it likely to be a shortfall that we'll have to pick up?
So again, whilst it's not a material planning reason, there is grant funding. It's match funding from Sports England. So what Sports England have put in, we've agreed to match to cover the costs.
Are there any other questions, members? Councillor Savage.
In your answer to the question about the third saving of the generation, obviously we won't be having a need for batteries or feeding back onto the grid, so that's a good thing. My understanding was that originally, you know, when our former administration were banging on about climate emergencies and doing nothing, we had put something like £200,000 into an environmental budget. I'm assuming that money is what's funding this as part of that match funding. Am I right in that thinking?
I don't know where the money's coming from to fund our match funding.
Are there any other questions? Thank you. Members, the planning officer's recommendation is that the committee agrees that prior approval is not required for the development. For the purposes of debate, I move the recommendation. Councillor Huntman, as Vice Chairman, will you second the motion?
I second that, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Please note that members should only speak once during the debate section. Who would like to speak? Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, very simply, I think this is a great opportunity. I don't think, you don't have to do too much in the way of maths to sort of work out an approximate payback. If you're saving a third of the electricity usage in a building which is expensive to power, especially with the way that energy prices are increasing, this has got to be good sense. And I think I'm hoping it's going to be a trailblazer for other similar schemes throughout the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to agree with what Councillor Fuller has said, I think anything that reduces the council's carbon footprint within the borough is most welcome, so I will be supporting the scheme. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? Okay. Members, the motion before you is to agree that prior approval is not required for the development. May I have a show of hands, please? Those for the motion. And that's carried unanimously. The motion is carried and it's agreed that prior approval is not required for this development. Thank you, members. That concludes the business for this evening. The meeting closed at 19:10. The live stream can now be stopped, please. Thank you. Good evening.